The moment my boss Gerald slid that contract across the mahogany table, smirking like he'd already won, I knew my entire life was about to explode. His lawyer sat there, confident. The investor from California waited, silent. Gerald leaned back and said those words that still make my blood boil. "We own your code, sweetheart. Every line you wrote. Your little side project? It belongs to us now." Then his lawyer started reading. His face went white. The investor simply said, "Actually, let me take you back to where this nightmare really started. 11 years ago, I walked into TechCore Solutions on my first day as a junior developer. I was 21 years old, fresh out of college with a computer science degree and stars in my eyes. The office was in downtown Denver, Colorado, one of those converted warehouse buildings with exposed brick and industrial lighting. I thought I'd found my dream job. They hired me for $42,000 a year. It wasn't much, even back then, but I told myself it was just the beginning. I'd work hard, prove myself, and move up. That's how it's supposed to work, right? My specialty was back-end infrastructure and database architecture. The kind of work that most people don't see but that keeps everything running. I loved it. The puzzle of making data flow efficiently. The challenge of building systems that could handle millions of transactions without breaking. It felt like art to me. Those first 3 years, I lived and breathed TechCore. I worked 60 to 70-hour weeks regularly. I'd come in at 7 in the morning and leave at 8 at night. Weekends, I'd be there too, especially when we had major deployments. I built the core database system that would eventually become the company's main product. My code handled transactions worth millions of dollars for our clients. At my 2-year mark, I requested my first raise. I'd done everything right. My performance reviews were excellent. I'd taken on projects way above my pay grade. I'd mentored 2 new hires. I walked into the meeting with my boss Gerald, nervous but hopeful. I asked for $50,000. That was still below market rate for someone with my skills and responsibilities. Gerald looked at me across his desk with this patronizing smile. "Terry, we appreciate your enthusiasm, but we need to see more commitment from you before we can consider a raise. Maybe next year." More commitment? I was already sacrificing my entire life for this company. But I was young and naive. I believed him. I worked even harder. Years 4 through 6 were when the real exploitation started. There was this massive system failure one weekend. A database corruption that threatened to wipe out millions of dollars in client data. I got the emergency call on Saturday morning and rushed to the office. I worked for 36 hours straight, barely sleeping, living on coffee, and vending machine snacks. I fixed it. I saved the company from a catastrophic loss that would have cost them over $3 million in penalties and lost clients. The following Monday, Gerald presented the solution to the board of directors. He took full credit. Didn't mention my name once. I found out because Brad, another developer who became something like a friend, told me about it. Brad said Gerald made it sound like he'd personally architected the solution. I requested another raise. I asked for $65,000. That was still below what I should have been making. Gerald gave me the same speech. "The economy is tough right now, Terry. We have to be conservative with compensation. Maybe next year." Meanwhile, I was training new hires who came in making more than me. 3 guys joined the team that year. Every single one started at salaries higher than mine. One of them was Brad. He came in at $68,000. I trained him personally, spent months teaching him our systems, and he was earning more than me from day one. But Brad was decent. He felt uncomfortable about it. We became friends, grabbing lunch together, talking about the ridiculous situations we dealt with. At least I thought we were friends. Years 7 through 9, I watched the company's profits skyrocket. TechCore's annual revenue went from $8 million to $27 million. Most of that growth was built on the infrastructure I'd created. My code powered 85% of the company's operations. Client after client praised the reliability and speed of our systems. I asked for a promotion to senior engineer and a salary of $80,000. I had the experience. I had the track record. I deserved it. Gerald called me into his office. "Terry, you're a great developer, but you're just not leadership material. You're better in a support role. You don't have that executive presence." Executive presence. I'll never forget those words. What he meant was I was a woman who didn't play golf with the boys and didn't laugh at their inappropriate jokes. 2 months later, Brad got promoted to senior engineer at $95,000 plus a bonus. Brad, who I had trained. Brad, who still came to me when he couldn't figure out complex problems. Brad, who had 4 years less experience than me. Something broke inside me that day. Not dramatically, just quietly, like a crack in a foundation that you don't notice until the whole building starts to lean. Year 10, I stopped asking for raises. I stopped believing in TechCore, and I started working on something else. Every night, after coming home from the office, after eating whatever quick dinner I could throw together, I'd open my personal laptop. From midnight until 3 in the morning, I built something that was mine. A data compression algorithm designed specifically for small businesses. Something that could help mom and pop shops afford the kind of enterprise-level data management that usually costs tens of thousands of dollars. I called it Data-Free Solutions. I filed the LLC paperwork. I used my own equipment, my own time, my own creative vision. I never touched TechCore's servers or software. This was completely separate from my day job. It kept me sane, knowing that somewhere out there I was building something that mattered, something that could help people, something that nobody could take credit for except me. Then came year 11. 6 months ago, TechCore's profits hit $38 million, a record high. I decided to try one more time. I asked for $75,000. That was still below market rate for someone with my experience. A senior database architect in Denver should have been making $90,000 to $100,000 minimum. Gerald actually laughed when I made the request. We were in a conference room with 2 other managers. He laughed and said, "75? For what? Terry, you do basic maintenance work. That's not worth $75,000. Basic maintenance work. The systems that generated $38 million in revenue were basic maintenance work." I went home that night and cried for 2 hours. Then I got angry. Really, truly angry for the first time. And I poured all that anger into Data-Free. I worked every spare moment. I refined the algorithm. I built out the user interface. I created documentation. I prepared to launch it for real. 3 weeks ago, everything changed. Brad came to my desk with this huge smile on his face. He'd just been promoted again. Lead engineer. $120,000. He wanted me to train the new junior developer they'd hired. I smiled. I congratulated him. I said all the right things, and inside, something crystallized. A decision I didn't even know I was making. That same night, I launched Data-Free publicly. I posted it on a few tech forums, submitted it to some small business websites, and went to bed not expecting much. The next morning, my phone was exploding. A tech blogger with 3 million followers had discovered Data-Free and written this glowing review. The headline was, "Solo Developer Disrupts Enterprise Data Market." The article went viral. The first week after that article published was absolutely surreal. I'd check my phone between meetings at TechCore and see the download counter climbing. 50,000 downloads in 3 days. Small business owners from all over the country were emailing me with testimonials that made me cry. A bakery owner in Maine wrote, "Your software saved us $6,000 this year. We were about to close because we couldn't afford the data management system our accountant said we needed. Data-Free gave us everything for free. You saved our family business." A veterinary clinic in Texas streamlined their entire record system using my algorithm. They sent me a photo of their staff celebrating, holding up a sign that said, "Thank you, Data-Free." It was everything I'd dreamed of. People were using something I'd created. It was making their lives better. And nobody could take credit for it except me. The media attention kept building. TechCrunch reached out for an interview, then Wired, then Forbes. I did phone interviews after work, sitting in my car in the TechCore parking lot, trying to keep my voice steady as journalists asked me about my vision for democratizing data management. Then came the Forbes article. It published on a Tuesday morning. I was at my desk at TechCore, going through my usual routine, when my phone started buzzing nonstop. The headline read, "TechCore engineer builds free tool that could save small businesses billions." My heart stopped. They'd mentioned TechCore by name. The article detailed my story, how I'd worked at TechCore for 11 years without a promotion, how I'd built data-free in the midnight hours, after long days at my regular job, how I was trying to help the little guys who couldn't afford expensive enterprise solutions. The article got 200,000 shares in the first 6 hours. Social media erupted. Comments like, "This is why we need unions in tech," and "Every developer should own their side projects," flooded in. My story became part of a larger conversation about worker exploitation in the tech industry. At 10 in the morning, Gerald appeared at my cubicle. His face was red. A vein pulsed in his temple. My office. Now. I followed him down the hall, my heart hammering. His office had a glass wall overlooking the main workspace. Everyone could see us, but nobody could hear through the soundproofing. He had the Forbes article pulled up on his computer screen. "When were you going to tell me about this?" His voice was ice. "It's my personal project," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I built it on my own time. We'll see about that." He picked up his phone. "Get me Howard Winters. Tell him it's urgent." Howard Winters was TechCore's legal counsel. This was really happening. Gerald was going to try to claim data-free. I went back to my desk. My hands were shaking. Brad saw me and came over. "Hey, I saw the Forbes article. That's amazing. Congratulations." He seemed genuinely happy for me. "Thanks," I managed to say. "Seriously, 50,000 downloads? That's incredible. You must be so proud." I was proud. And terrified. Because I could see through Gerald's glass wall. He was on the phone, pacing, gesturing angrily. That same day, late afternoon, I got a phone call from a number with a California area code. "Is this Terry Callahan?" A woman's voice, professional and warm. "Yes, this is Terry. My name is Diana Chen." "Wait, I can't use Chen. Let me restart. My name is Diana Brooks. I'm a managing partner at Elevation Ventures. We're a venture capital firm based in Silicon Valley. We've been following Datafree's development, and we're very interested in discussing a potential investment." I almost dropped my phone. "I'm sorry, what?" "We'd like to offer $5 million in Series A funding to help you scale Datafree into a full company." $5 million. The number didn't feel real. We scheduled a video call for Thursday evening. I could barely concentrate on work for the next 2 days. Diana and I talked for 2 hours. She understood the vision immediately. Democratizing data management for America's 15 million small businesses. The market potential was massive. "We'd need to do standard due diligence on intellectual property ownership," Diana said casually. "Just routine verification that you own the code free and clear." My stomach dropped. "Of course. I'll have our legal team send over the preliminary documentation. If everything checks out, we can move forward quickly. This is exactly the kind of project we love to support." After the call, I sat in my apartment feeling this strange mixture of hope and dread. $5 million. A real chance to build something meaningful. But what if TechCore tried to claim ownership? What if Gerald found a way to take this from me too? Friday morning arrived. I got to work at 7:30, trying to focus on my regular tasks. At 8:30, Gerald's assistant appeared at my cubicle. "Gerald needs you in conference room A, right now." The walk down that hallway felt like walking to an execution. I opened the conference room door and stopped. The room was full. Gerald sat at the head of the long table looking smug. Howard Winters, the company attorney, had a stack of documents in front of him. Brad was there too, sitting in the corner, looking uncomfortable and confused. And there was someone I didn't recognize. A man in an expensive suit, probably in his late 50s, with silver hair and cold eyes. "Terry, come in. Sit down." Gerald gestured to a chair. "This is Preston Hayes from Elevation Ventures. I invited him to join us. I thought he should hear this conversation." Preston Hayes, Diana's boss, the lead investor. He gave me a tight smile but said nothing. "Let's talk about who really owns Datafree," Gerald said. He slid a document across the table toward me. "My employment contract from 11 years ago." Gerald leaned back in his chair with the kind of confidence that comes from believing you've already won. His fingers were steepled under his chin, and he had this little smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Terry, when you started here 11 years ago, You signed an employment agreement. Do you remember? My mouth was dry. Yes. Good. Howard, please read Section 7, subsection C. I want everyone in this room to hear it clearly. Howard Winters adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses and cleared his throat. He had one of those lawyer voices that made everything sound official and threatening. He began reading from the document. All inventions, discoveries, concepts, code, and intellectual property created by employee during the term of employment, whether on company time or personal time, whether using company resources or personal resources, shall be the sole and exclusive property of TechCore Solutions, Incorporated. The words hit me like physical blows. Whether on company time or personal time, whether using company resources or personal resources, I felt the room start to spin. Gerald's smile widened. Every line of code you wrote for Data-Free belongs to us, sweetheart. Every algorithm, every interface element, all of it. Preston Hayes shifted in his seat. His expression had gone from neutral to grim. Now, Gerald continued, warming to his victory, we're not unreasonable people. We understand you put a lot of work into this project. So here's what we're prepared to offer. You can continue as lead developer for Data-Free under TechCore's ownership. We'll even give you a raise, $65,000 a year. And when we eventually sell the company or the technology, we'll give you a $5,000 bonus. That's generous, considering you built it while employed here. Brad looked sick. He was staring at the table, unable to meet my eyes. I found my voice, though it came out shakier than I wanted. You can't do this. I built Data-Free entirely on my own time. I used my own laptop, my own internet connection, my own everything. I never touched TechCore equipment. Gerald spread his hands like he was being reasonable. Doesn't matter. Read the contract, whether on company time or personal time. The language is very clear. Howard nodded. It's actually one of the more comprehensive IP clauses I've seen. Very ironclad. Preston Hayes stood up. If TechCore owns the intellectual property, then Elevation Ventures cannot invest. We only fund ventures where ownership is clear and unencumbered. He looked at me with something that might have been pity. I'm sorry, Miss Callahan. The deal is off. Wait, I said desperately. Please, just wait. But Preston was already gathering his things. Gerald, send me documentation proving ownership transfer. We'll need to see how this resolves before we consider any future involvement. He left. Just like that, $5 million walked out the door. Gerald was practically glowing. Howard, show her the clause again. I want her to understand exactly what she signed. Howard pulled out my original employment contract. It was thick, maybe 40 pages, the paper slightly yellowed with age. He flipped through to page 12 and laid it open in front of me. Section 7, subsection C. There it was, in black and white. All those terrifying words about intellectual property ownership. Howard began reading it aloud again, presumably for some kind of legal record. His voice droned through the legalese. I stared at the page, feeling everything I'd worked for slipping away. Then Howard's voice caught. He stopped mid-sentence. He looked closer at the document. His face changed. The color literally drained from his cheeks, going pale and then almost gray. What? Gerald demanded. What is it? Howard's hands trembled slightly as he held the page. There's a written modification to this section. What are you talking about? Gerald jumped up and came around the table. Howard pointed to the bottom of Section 7. There, in blue ink, someone had handwritten a note and initialed it. Clause 7C, waived for personal projects developed off-site without company resources. Approved JH 3/15/2014. My heart started pounding for a completely different reason. I leaned forward to look. I remembered. Oh my God, I remembered. The hiring manager 11 years ago. His name was James Harrigan. He was the VP of Human Resources, a kind man in his 50s who'd interviewed me for the position. He'd thought the intellectual property clause was too broad, too restrictive. He told me he was modifying it, that TechCore shouldn't own things I built completely on my own time with my own resources. I'd forgotten. In 11 years of working here, dealing with everything else, I'd completely forgotten about that handwritten modification. Gerald snatched the document from Howard. This can't be valid. James had no authority to modify employment contracts. Howard's voice was quiet. James Harrigan was the vice president of human resources at the time. He had full authority to approve modifications to employment agreements. The initials are his, the date is documented, and it's part of the original signed contract. The room went completely silent. Preston Hayes, who had been halfway out the door, stopped. He turned around slowly. Actually, Preston said, walking back to the table, it appears Miss Callahan owns her intellectual property outright. Gerald's face went from triumphant to desperate in seconds. That modification isn't legally binding. It's just a handwritten note. It's a valid contract modification, executed by an authorized officer of the company, made before the contract was finalized and signed, Howard said. He wouldn't meet Gerald's eyes. It's binding. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Was this real? Did I actually own Datafree? But Gerald wasn't done. He grabbed the edge of the table, leaning forward aggressively. Fine. But Terry, you built Datafree using knowledge you gained here. Trade secrets, proprietary methodologies. You learned everything about data architecture from working on tech core systems. That's misappropriation. Howard's eyes lit up, like Gerald had just thrown him a lifeline. That's correct. The algorithm concepts could potentially constitute misappropriation of trade secrets, even if you technically own the code itself. My brief moment of relief turned back to panic. The core principles of your compression algorithm, Howard continued, gaining confidence, were they influenced by work you did here at TechCore? I learned data architecture in college, I protested, and from textbooks, and from open source projects. But you refined those skills here, Gerald said, on our systems, working with our data. That's proprietary knowledge. Preston Hayes sat back down. His expression had shifted again, from hope back to concern. So, we're back to square one, Gerald said with a cold smile. You might technically own the code, but if you try to move forward with Datafree, we'll sue you for trade secret misappropriation. We'll tie you up in court for years, cost you hundreds of thousands in legal fees. By the time it's resolved, your little project will be dead and buried. He leaned back, triumphant again. Or you can accept our offer. Come back to work, keep your head down, and let us handle commercializing Datafree the right way. Under TechCore's management, Brad finally spoke up from the corner. Gerald, this isn't right. You can't just... Brad, you're excused, Gerald snapped. This doesn't concern you. Brad looked at me helplessly, then left the room. I sat there, staring at the contract, at the handwritten note that had given me hope for 30 seconds before Gerald found another way to destroy me. You have until Monday to decide, Gerald said. Accept our terms, or we file a lawsuit for trade secret misappropriation. Your choice, sweetheart. I didn't sleep that weekend. I spent Saturday and Sunday researching trade secret law, reading case precedents, trying to understand if Gerald's threats had any legal basis. The more I read, the more terrified I became. Trade secret cases were incredibly complex. Companies with deep pockets could drag them out for years, bankrupting individual defendants, even if those defendants eventually won. Monday morning, I didn't go to TechCore. I couldn't face walking into that building, seeing Gerald's smug face. I called in sick. Tuesday, I forced myself to go in. I arrived at 7:30 in the morning, hoping to avoid Gerald. The security guard stopped me in the lobby. Ma'am, I need you to come with me. My stomach dropped. He walked me to the HR department. Patricia Drummond, the HR director, was waiting with a cardboard box containing my desk items. My coffee mug, my spare phone charger, the little succulent plant I'd kept alive for 3 years. Terry, you're being placed on paid administrative leave pending legal review, Patricia said. She wouldn't look me in the eye. What does that mean? It means you can't come into the office or access any company systems until this situation is resolved. You'll continue to receive your salary. You'll receive formal documentation via certified mail. They escorted me out of the building. 11 years, and I was walked out like a criminal. A few early arriving coworkers saw me leaving with my box. The shame burned in my chest. Wednesday, the certified mail arrived. I signed for it with shaking hands. TechCore Solutions versus Terry Callahan and Datafree Solutions, LLC. The lawsuit was 47 pages long. I read every word, feeling sicker with each page. They claimed my data compression algorithm was based on proprietary TechCore methodologies. They claimed I'd breached my fiduciary duty to the company. They claimed unjust enrichment, that I'd profited from knowledge gained through TechCore's training and systems. The damages they sought, $15 million. Plus, an immediate injunction to shut down Datafree and prevent me from distributing the software or the code. I called 3 different attorneys that day. All 3 said the same thing. This would be incredibly expensive to defend. We're talking hundreds of thousands in legal fees. Maybe more. Did I have that kind of money? My savings account had $18,400. That was it. Then I found page 17 of the lawsuit, a section I'd almost skipped over because the legal language was so dense. They were enforcing a non-compete agreement. I tore through my files, looking for any paperwork from my 3rd year at TechCore. Found it buried in an old folder, a document I'd signed that I'd been told was just a routine employee handbook update. But hidden in the fine print was a non-compete clause. 2 years, within a 50-mile radius of Denver, in the data management industry. If enforced, I couldn't work on Datafree. I couldn't work for any competitor. I'd be frozen out of my entire career. I sat on my apartment floor, surrounded by paperwork, and tried not to have a panic attack. That afternoon, I got an email from Preston Hayes at Elevation Ventures. Miss Callahan, given the uncertain legal situation and the potential for protracted litigation, Elevation Ventures must withdraw our investment offer. We wish you the best in resolving this matter. $5 million. Gone. Thursday, TechCore's PR team launched their offensive. A press release went out to every tech news outlet. TechCore Solutions protects proprietary technology against former employees' misappropriation. They made me sound like a corporate spy, a thief, someone who'd stolen trade secrets and tried to profit from them. Gerald did an interview with the Denver Business Journal. I read it online, feeling nauseous. "We trusted Terry," he said in the article. "We invested in her training for 11 years. We gave her access to our most sensitive systems and methodologies. This is how she repays that trust." It's disappointing. The comments section lit up. People who'd never met me, never heard my side, calling me a thief, a cheat, entitled. Someone wrote, "Typical millennial, thinking she deserves credit for work she did on company time." Another, "TechCore is the real victim here." My phone buzzed constantly with messages. Most were hateful. Some were from journalists wanting comments. I turned it off. Friday morning, I checked my bank account. After rent, utilities, student loans, and car insurance, I had $4,200 left. I needed to find an attorney who would take my case, but nobody wanted to work on contingency against a corporation with TechCore's resources. That afternoon, letters started going out. TechCore's attorneys sent cease and desist notices to everyone who downloaded Datafree. Hundreds of small business owners got legal threats. "You are hereby notified that Datafree software contains misappropriated trade secrets belonging to TechCore Solutions. Continued use of this software may expose you to legal liability. Immediately cease use and delete all copies." My download numbers plummeted. 90% drop overnight. The bakery in Maine that had thanked me sent a panicked email. "I'm so sorry. I can't afford to be involved in a lawsuit. I have to delete Datafree. I hope you understand." I understood. These were small business owners barely getting by. They couldn't risk legal trouble. By Friday evening, Datafree was effectively dead. Not legally shut down yet, but so tainted by legal threats that nobody would touch it. I was sitting on my couch, staring at my laptop screen, when my doorbell rang. It was Brad. He looked terrible, like he hadn't slept in days. "Can I come in? I need to tell you something." I let him in, suspicious and exhausted. "I've been documenting everything," Brad said, pulling out his phone. "For months. I couldn't keep doing it. I couldn't keep going along with it." "Going along with what?" He showed me his phone. Notes, emails, voice recordings, hundreds of files. "Gerald told me to give you all the worst assignments, to make you look bad." Last year, when you saved the company during that server crisis, Gerald told me to put my name on the report to the board. He said you were just in a support role and didn't deserve credit. I stared at the evidence scrolling past on his screen. The promotion I got last month. Brad's voice cracked. They offered it to you first. Gerald rejected it on your behalf without telling you. Then he gave it to me. Rage and heartbreak fought for dominance in my chest. There's more, Brad said. Gerald is planning to make me testify that you used company servers for data-free development. He wants me to lie under oath. But you never did, Terry. I checked the access logs myself. You never touched our systems for your project. You're completely clean. Why are you telling me this? Because it's wrong. What he's doing to you is wrong. What he made me do is wrong. Brad met my eyes. I'll testify for you. I'll tell the truth. I saved everything. For the first time in days, I felt a tiny spark of hope. You'll lose your job. I know. But I can't live with myself if I don't do this. We sat there in my living room, two people who'd been manipulated by the same system, trying to figure out how to fight back. Then my laptop dinged. New email. From my landlord. My hands shook as I opened it. Miss Callahan, I've been contacted by attorneys representing TechCore Solutions. They've informed me that you may have used your apartment, which receives a corporate housing assistance subsidy from TechCore as part of your compensation package, to develop software that violates your employment agreement. Under the terms of the subsidy agreement, use of subsidized housing for unauthorized commercial activity constitutes a breach. I am hereby providing 30 days notice of lease termination, effective December 1st. I read it 3 times before the meaning sank in. They were taking my home. Brad read over my shoulder. Oh God. Terry, I'm so sorry. I couldn't speak. I just stared at the screen. 30 days. I had 30 days to find a new apartment in Denver's impossible rental market, while unemployed, with a lawsuit hanging over me. Everything was falling apart. The next 2 weeks were a blur of nightmare logistics. I packed my life into boxes. My studio apartment that I'd lived in for 6 years was stripped bare, taped up cardboard everywhere. Every item I put in a box felt like another piece of my life disintegrating. My sister Ashley drove up from Colorado Springs to help. She's 3 years older than me, a nurse with 2 kids and a husband who works construction. She took one look at my face and hugged me without saying anything. You're moving in with us, she said. Guest room is yours as long as you need it. Ashley, I can't. You don't have space. Your kids. My kids will be fine sharing a room for a while. You're my sister. We take care of each other. The drive to Colorado Springs with my Honda Civic packed full of boxes felt like a funeral procession. 47 miles away from Denver. Away from the tech industry connections I'd spent 11 years building. Away from everything. Ashley's guest room was small but clean. She'd put fresh sheets on the bed and cleared out the closet. Her son Calvin's toys were still scattered in one corner. He's 8 years old, obsessed with dinosaurs and superhero movies. That first night, lying in my nephew's spare bed, staring at glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling, I cried harder than I'd ever cried in my life. The legal proceedings moved forward like a machine designed to crush me. TechCore filed an emergency motion for a preliminary injunction. The hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning. I still hadn't found an attorney I could afford. I'd called 43 lawyers. Most didn't even call me back. The ones who did said the same thing. Retainer fees starting at $25,000, total costs likely over $300,000. Contingency wasn't an option because damages cases against corporations rarely paid enough to make it worthwhile for the attorney. I was going to have to represent myself against TechCore's team of corporate lawyers. Then, 5 days before the hearing, I got a call from an attorney named Sandra Yates. She had a small practice in Denver, mostly representing workers in employment disputes. I read about your case in the news, she said, and I have some thoughts. Can we meet? We met at a coffee shop in Boulder, halfway between Denver and Colorado Springs. Sandra was in her mid-40s, with short gray hair and intense eyes. She reminded me of a fighter. I'll take your case on contingency, she said. 33% of any recovery. But Terry, I have to be honest with you. This is going to be brutal. TechCore has resources we don't. They can drag this out for years. I don't care. I can't let them win. Good. Then let's get to work. I spent every day in Ashley's living room, laptop on my knees, working with Sandra. We built our defense. Brad's documentation was crucial. Emails showing Gerald's explicit instructions to sabotage my career. Recordings of meetings where he laughed about keeping me underpaid. Evidence that they'd denied me promotions that I'd earned. But we needed more. We needed to prove that TechCore's trade secrets weren't actually secret or proprietary. I couldn't sleep one night. It was 3 in the morning. Ashley's house was quiet, except for the hum of the refrigerator. I sat in the living room with my laptop, digging through TechCore's public code repositories. Something had been bothering me. The algorithms they claimed I'd stolen, that I'd supposedly learned from their proprietary methodologies. I knew data compression inside and out. I knew what was truly innovative versus what was standard practice. I started comparing TechCore's code to open-source projects, and I found it. Chunks of code copied directly from an MIT licensed open-source project. No attribution, no credit, in direct violation of the license terms. TechCore had been using it for at least 5 years, claiming it as their own proprietary development. Then I found more. Database structures pulled from Apache projects, compression algorithms borrowed from GNU projects, none of it properly licensed or attributed. TechCore had been stealing open-source code for years and claiming it as their proprietary trade secrets. This was massive. This changed everything. I worked for 3 days straight, documenting every instance, matching code line by line, checking timestamps, building an ironclad case. By the time I finished, I had a 90-page report proving systematic theft of open-source code. Their trade secrets weren't theirs at all. They'd stolen them from the open-source community. I sent everything to Sandra. She called me 2 hours later. This is incredible. Terry, this doesn't just defend you. This could destroy their entire case. We're filing a counterclaim for fraud on the court. Brad provided additional ammunition. Internal emails where Gerald explicitly told developers to copy open-source code without following license requirements. One email said, "Just change the variable names. Nobody will notice." It was a smoking gun. We filed the counterclaim 3 days before the preliminary injunction hearing. I felt hope for the first time in weeks. The hearing was at the Denver District Court. I wore my only suit, the one I'd bought for job interviews 11 years ago. It didn't fit quite right anymore. Sandra met me outside the courtroom. "Deep breath," she said. "We've got good evidence. Just stay calm." We walked into the courtroom. TechCore had 3 attorneys at their table. Howard Winters and 2 others I didn't recognize, all in expensive suits. Gerald was there too, sitting in the gallery, arms crossed. The judge entered. Harrison P. Thornton, according to the nameplate. He was probably 67 years old, gray hair, stern expression. Sandra leaned over and whispered, "That's not good." "Why?" "Judge Thornton golfs with TechCore's CEO every Thursday. They're friends." My stomach dropped. The hearing was brutal. TechCore's attorneys presented their case. Gerald testified, lying smoothly about how I'd used company resources, how I'd betrayed their trust. Howard Winters argued that the preliminary injunction was necessary to prevent further harm to TechCore's business interests. Sandra presented our counterclaim evidence, the open-source code theft, the systematic violations, Brad's documentation of Gerald's corruption. Judge Thornton barely looked at it. "Miss Yates, this is a distraction from the core issue of whether your client misappropriated trade secrets. Your Honor, if their trade secrets aren't actually theirs, I'm not interested in collateral accusations. This hearing is about the preliminary injunction. The court finds that TechCore has demonstrated sufficient likelihood of success on the merits. The motion for preliminary injunction is granted." He banged his gavel. Datafree's website was to be taken down immediately. All LLC bank accounts frozen. I was prohibited from distributing the software or discussing the underlying code pending trial. Sandra tried to argue. "Your Honor, we've submitted evidence of fraud. The evidence is suppressed. It's not relevant to the trade secret claim. This hearing is concluded." We walked out of the courthouse into the cold November air. I sat down on the concrete steps, unable to process what had just happened. "He's protecting them," Sandra said quietly. This is judicial bias, but proving it is almost impossible. My phone buzzed. A text from Ashley. How did it go? I couldn't respond. I just stared at my phone until the screen went dark. That evening, back at Ashley's house, I checked my bank account. $237. Student loan payment due in 3 days. $600. Car insurance overdue. I'd applied to 73 jobs in the past month. 0 responses. TechCore was blackballing me in the tech industry. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Hello? Gerald's voice. Terry. This can all go away. Drop data free, come back to work. We'll give you $60,000 a year. Clean slate, like none of this ever happened. You're destroying my life. No, you did this to yourself. You have 48 hours to accept my offer. Otherwise, we pursue full damages. $15 million. We'll bankrupt you forever. You'll be paying us for the rest of your life. Wage garnishment until you're 70 years old. Is that really what you want? He hung up. I sat in the guest room, surrounded by Calvin's toys, and seriously considered giving up. Just surrendering. Going back to TechCore, accepting defeat, trying to survive. Ashley knocked on the door. Terry? You okay? No. She came in and sat on the bed next to me. What can I do? Nothing. There's nothing anyone can do. He won. The judge is corrupt. The system is rigged. I should just give up. Is that what you want? I want this to be over. We sat in silence. Calvin appeared in the doorway, holding his favorite dinosaur toy. Aunt Terry, why are you sad all the time? I didn't know how to explain to an 8-year-old that sometimes the world is unfair and the bad guys win. Ashley put her arm around me. We sat there until I stopped crying. At 4 a.m, unable to sleep, I checked my email out of habit. New message. Subject. I know what they did to you. From Anonymous748@protonmail.com. I worked at TechCore for 6 years. Gerald did the same thing to me. He stole my project, sued me, ruined my career. I have evidence that could help you. But it's dangerous. They'll come after me too. If you're willing to fight, meet me tomorrow. Denver Public Library, main branch, computer section, 2 p.m. I'll be wearing a red jacket. Come alone. I stared at the email for a long time. Maybe I wasn't giving up after all. I arrived at the Denver Public Library 15 minutes early. The main branch is this beautiful old building with high ceilings and rows of computers in the technology section. I walked past the reference desk, scanning faces, looking for anyone in a red jacket. At exactly 2 p.m., a woman sat down at a computer near the back corner. Early 40s, thin, nervous energy radiating off her. She wore a red fleece jacket. I approached slowly and sat at the computer next to hers. She didn't look at me, just whispered, "Follow me in 1 minute." Not together. She stood and walked toward the private study rooms. I counted to 60, then followed. The study room was small, glass walls but soundproof. She'd already pulled the privacy shade. When I entered, she locked the door behind me. "I'm Claire," she said. "Claire Donovan. We don't have much time, so I'm going to talk fast." She pulled a flash drive from her pocket. I worked at TechCore from 2012 to 2017. I was a software architect. I developed a cloud migration tool on my own time, just like you did with Datafree. I was excited about it. Stupid enough to mention it to Gerald, to ask his advice about whether I should pursue it. Her hands shook slightly as she talked. He convinced me to show him the code. Said he wanted to help, that we could develop it together through TechCore. I trusted him. 2 months later, he filed company patents on my algorithm. Cut me out completely. When I objected, he fired me for supposed performance issues. Did you sue? I tried. Got a terrible attorney who didn't understand tech. Lost everything. Couldn't find work in the industry for 3 years. Everyone believed TechCore's version. Now I'm a freelance consultant. Barely surviving. She handed me the flash drive. Before they escorted me out, I copied everything I could. Internal emails, strategy documents. There's one memo in particular you need to see. It's from Gerald to the executive team, outlining his strategy for acquiring high-value IP through employee relationships. It's a business model, Terry. Find talented employees, encourage them to share their side projects, then claim ownership through the employment contract. My hands felt cold. How many others? You're not the first. You're not even the fifth. She pulled out a folder with printed documents, names and dates. Robert Hayes, mobile app developer, 2008. Gerald stole his location-based social app, sold it for millions. Jennifer Palmer, AI researcher, 2010. She developed a machine learning model for predictive analytics. Gerald patented it under TechCore, made it the core of their analytics division. David Kowalski, security specialist, 2014, built a network security tool, same pattern. Troy Simmons, UI designer, 2016, created an interface framework. Gerald took it. Me, 2017. And now you, 2024. 6 people, 6 stolen projects, millions of dollars in value extracted from employees who thought they were building their own futures. We need to find them, I said. All of them, if we can show a pattern. I already did, Claire said. I've been tracking this for years. I have contact information. Most of them are scared, traumatized. Gerald destroyed their careers, their confidence, their financial stability. But if you're willing to fight, I think I can convince them to testify. Over the next 2 weeks, Claire and I worked in secret. We met in coffee shops in different towns, used encrypted messaging, acted like we were fugitives. Maybe we were. We found Robert Hayes working as a manager at a grocery store in Aurora. He was 39 years old, dead eyes, given up on tech completely. When we told him about the others, about the pattern, something flickered back to life in his expression. I'll testify, he said. I've got nothing left to lose. Jennifer Palmer was teaching high school computer science in Boulder. She'd left the tech industry after TechCore destroyed her reputation. But when she heard there were others, that she wasn't alone, she cried. All these years, I thought it was just me, that I'd done something wrong. David Kowalski had moved to Oregon, still fighting depression and anxiety from the legal battle. He was hesitant at first, but Claire knew exactly what to say. She'd lived it too. Troy Simmons was the hardest to convince. He'd rebuilt his life as a real estate agent, had a family to think about. But when we showed him Gerald's internal memo, the one that outlined the systematic exploitation strategy, his face went hard. That son of a bitch. Yeah, I'll testify. 6 victims. All with nearly identical stories. All with documentation showing Gerald's pattern of grooming talented employees, stealing their work, and destroying their careers when they resisted. Sandra Yates saw the potential immediately. This isn't just your case anymore, Terry. This is systematic fraud. This is a pattern of abuse spanning 16 years. We can file a class action lawsuit. We can expose TechCore's entire operation. We planned carefully, coordinated with Brad, who was still on the inside, still documenting everything. He provided recent emails showing Gerald was already targeting another employee, a young developer named Amy, who'd mentioned her side project in a team meeting. We scheduled a press conference for the following Monday. The plan was to go public with everything. Contact the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, every major tech publication. Expose Gerald and TechCore for what they really were. I felt hope. Real hope. For the first time since this nightmare started, I believed we might actually win. The weekend before the press conference, I stayed at Claire's apartment. We reviewed all the evidence one more time, making sure every document was organized, every testimony was solid. Friday afternoon at 5 p.m., Sandra called. Her voice was tight, stressed. We have a problem. A big problem. Judge Thornton had issued an emergency gag order. No parties involved in the TechCore versus Callahan lawsuit could discuss the case publicly. Violation meant contempt of court and possible jail time. The press conference was canceled. Our entire media strategy was dead. How did he know? I asked. Someone tipped him off. Gerald has connections everywhere. But it got worse. Saturday morning, I woke up in Claire's guest room to pounding on the door. Claire answered it. I heard voices, official sounding. Police. We're looking for Terry Callahan. I came to the door. 2 detectives from Denver PD stood there with handcuffs. Terry Callahan, you're under arrest for unauthorized computer access and corporate espionage. What? That's insane. They didn't care. They read me my rights while snapping handcuffs on my wrists. Claire stood there, pale and shaking, as they led me out to their car. Gerald had filed a criminal complaint. He claimed I'd hacked TechCore's servers to steal data for my counterclaim, that the open-source code evidence I'd found was obtained through illegal computer access. It was completely false. I'd never touched TechCore's systems after they terminated my access. Everything I'd found was in public repositories or came from Brad, who had legitimate access. But now it was a criminal case, and that changed everything. They processed me at the county jail. Fingerprints, mugshot, strip search. I stood there in an orange jumpsuit in a concrete cell and felt the last of my hope draining away. Bail was set at $50,000. I needed $5,000 for a bail bond. I didn't have it. I spent the night in a holding cell with 4 other women. Drug charges mostly. 1 assault. They were curious about the white-collar woman in for hacking. I couldn't explain. I just sat on the thin mattress and stared at the cinder block wall. Sunday morning, Ashley showed up with a bail bondsman. She'd taken out a loan against her car to post my bail. In the parking lot, I broke down completely. I'm destroying your life, too. Your kids, your car, everything. You're my sister, Ashley said fiercely. We fight together, always. By Sunday afternoon, the news had spread. TechCore employee arrested for corporate hacking. Gerald gave interviews to every outlet that would listen. We trusted her with access to our most sensitive systems. She betrayed that trust. She used her knowledge of our security to steal confidential data. We're pursuing both civil and criminal remedies. The narrative flipped completely. I went from sympathetic underdog to criminal hacker in the public eye. The comments online were vicious. Monday morning, the other victims started backing out. Robert Hayes called. I'm sorry. My employer found out about my past lawsuit with TechCore. They're threatening to fire me. I can't risk it. I have a family. Jennifer Palmer. My husband is scared. We have a mortgage, kids in school. I can't put them through a legal battle. I'm sorry. David Kowalski. They somehow contacted my therapist. I don't know how they even knew I was seeing someone. This is triggering my PTSD. I can't do this again. Troy Simmons. My real estate broker called. Someone filed complaints against my license. Anonymous complaints about my past legal issues. They're trying to destroy my career again. I have to withdraw. One by one, they all disappeared. The criminal charges against me had scared them too much. If Gerald could get me arrested on false charges, what would he do to them? Only Claire remained. I'm still with you, she said. But Terry, 1 witness isn't enough. We needed all 6 to show the pattern. Sandra was blunt. With the gag order, we can't go public. With the other witnesses gone, we can't prove the pattern, and now you have criminal charges hanging over you. Even if you win the civil case, the criminal record will follow you forever. Gerald has systematically eliminated every advantage we had. I sat in Ashley's guest room Monday night, staring at my laptop. Criminal trial scheduled for 3 months out. Civil trial 6 months after that. No money for a good criminal defense attorney. No job prospects, no witnesses, no hope. My phone buzzed. Email. From preston.hayes@elevationventures.com. Subject. I owe you an apology, and perhaps an opportunity. Miss Callahan, I've been doing research since pulling out of your deal. What TechCore is doing to you is unconscionable. I have resources and connections they don't know about. If you're still fighting, call me immediately. I might be able to help in ways you haven't considered. My private number is below. This needs to happen quickly, before Gerald makes his next move. I stared at the email for a long time. Then I picked up my phone and dialed. Preston Hayes answered on the first ring. Miss Callahan, thank you for calling. How quickly can you get to Denver? I'm in Colorado Springs. I can be there in under an hour. Good. There's a coffee shop in Boulder. Neutral territory. Meet me there in 90 minutes. Come alone, but bring your attorney if she's available. Sandra and I drove together. She was skeptical. Venture capitalists don't usually get involved in legal fights. They run from them. Why would he help now? I don't know. But we're out of options. The coffee shop was small, tucked into a quiet street near the university. Preston was already there, sitting at a corner table with another man I didn't recognize. Younger guy, maybe 30, wearing a hoodie and jeans. This is Marcus, Preston started. Wet. I can't use Marcus. Let me revise. This is Tyler, Preston said. He's a cybersecurity specialist, one of the best forensic analysts in the industry. We sat down. Preston leaned forward, his voice low. I've been in Silicon Valley for 30 years. I've seen every dirty trick companies use to steal IP, crush competition, and exploit talent. What Gerald is doing isn't just unethical. It's criminal, and I'm not going to let it stand. Why do you care? I asked. Because I was you, 25 years ago. A bigger company tried to steal my startup. They sued me, threatened me, almost destroyed me. Someone helped me fight back. Now I help others when I can. He pushed a folder across the table. Tyler has been investigating TechCore's systems remotely, legally, using only public information and OSINT techniques. Tell her what you found. Tyler pulled out his laptop. The criminal charges against you claim you hacked TechCore's servers to obtain evidence, but I analyzed their server logs. Every access point, every timestamp, every transaction. You never touched their systems after your access was terminated. Not once. He turned the laptop so I could see detailed logs, timestamps, IP addresses. More than that, someone at TechCore fabricated evidence. They created false log entries showing your employee credentials accessing their system last month. But they did it badly. The timestamps are inconsistent with their backup logs. The IP addresses don't match any internet service provider. It's obvious fabrication once you know what to look for. Sandra grabbed the laptop, studying the data. This proves the criminal charges are false. It proves more than that, Preston said. Falsifying evidence in a criminal case is a federal crime. Gerald didn't just lie. He created fraudulent computer records to support a false criminal complaint. That's wire fraud. That's computer fraud. That's serious federal time. My heart was pounding. Can we prove this in court? Better. We're taking it to the FBI. Tyler's analysis is ironclad, and I have connections. My college roommate is now a federal prosecutor in Denver. He owes me several favors. Preston smiled grimly. Gerald made a crucial mistake. He went criminal. Civil disputes are one thing. But when you involve law enforcement with fabricated evidence, you cross a line that gets federal attention. Over the next week, everything moved fast. Preston's prosecutor friend reviewed Tyler's forensic analysis. Within 2 days, the FBI opened a formal investigation into TechCore, not just the fabricated hacking charges. They also looked into the systematic theft of open-source code that I'd documented. Violating software licenses for commercial profit is a serious federal issue when it involves millions of dollars in revenue. Thursday morning, federal agents raided TechCore's offices. They seized servers, computers, filed documents. Employees were told to leave while agents combed through everything. Gerald's confidence finally cracked. Brad texted me a photo from inside the office. Gerald standing in the hallway, watching federal agents carry out boxes of evidence, his face ashen. 2 weeks later, the prosecutor's office called me. Miss Callahan, we're dismissing all criminal charges against you. Our forensic analysis confirms you never accessed TechCore's systems. Furthermore, we've identified the individual at TechCore who fabricated the server logs. That person is now cooperating with our investigation. The relief was so intense I couldn't speak. I just sat in Ashley's living room and cried. The fabricated evidence will also be expunged from your record, the prosecutor continued, as if it never existed. I'm sorry for what you went through. Meanwhile, Claire had been working her own angle. While my case was gagged by Judge Thornton's order, her case wasn't. She filed a separate federal lawsuit in a different jurisdiction, naming all 6 victims as plaintiffs. The lawsuit claimed RICO violations, Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, a pattern of criminal activity spanning 16 years, involving wire fraud, computer fraud, and systematic theft of intellectual property. She included every piece of evidence we'd gathered. Gerald's internal memos outlining the exploitation strategy, emails from all 6 cases showing identical patterns, financial records showing millions in profits from stolen projects. Federal RICO lawsuits are public record. A journalist at the Wall Street Journal found it while searching federal court filings. The story ran on the front page 2 weeks later. TechCore executive accused of decade-long scheme to steal employee innovations. The article detailed everything. All 6 victims, the systematic fraud, Gerald's memos, the pattern of grooming employees, stealing their work, and destroying their careers when they resisted. The tech industry exploded. Social media lit up. TechCore's stock price dropped 23% in one day. Major clients started terminating contracts. Judge Thornton's position became untenable. With a federal investigation ongoing and national media coverage, his bias toward TechCore was indefensible. The Colorado bar received dozens of complaints about his conflict of interest. He recused himself from my case to avoid any appearance of impropriety. A new judge was assigned. Patricia Mendoza, known for being fair, thorough, and completely uninterested in corporate golf games. The hearing with Judge Mendoza was scheduled for a Thursday morning. I wore a borrowed suit from Sandra. We walked into the courtroom feeling something we hadn't felt before: confidence. Judge Mendoza had clearly reviewed everything with fresh eyes. She started by holding up my original employment contract. I see a valid, handwritten modification to the intellectual property clause, executed by an authorized HR officer. This clearly waives TechCore's ownership of personal projects developed off-site. Why are we even here? Howard Winters tried to argue about trade secrets. Judge Mendoza cut him off. Counselor, I've reviewed the evidence that was suppressed in the previous proceedings. Your client's so-called trade secrets appear to be stolen from open-source projects. Code taken from MIT licensed, Apache licensed, and GNU licensed projects without proper attribution. That's not a trade secret. That's theft. She looked at Brad, who was testifying as a witness. Young man, you've provided sworn testimony that your supervisor instructed you to fabricate evidence and lie under oath. That's conspiracy to commit perjury. You're being granted immunity for your cooperation, but your former supervisor is going to have a very difficult time. She reviewed Claire's federal RICO lawsuit. I see a clear pattern of fraudulent behavior spanning 16 years, involving 6 separate victims. This isn't a simple employment dispute. This is systematic criminal enterprise. Finally, she looked at Gerald, who sat at the defense table looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. Mr. Gerald, the evidence suggests you've spent 16 years building a business model on theft, fraud, and exploitation. That ends today. Judge Mendoza ruled from the bench. TechCore's lawsuit against Ms. Callahan is dismissed with prejudice. Ms. Callahan owns Data-Free Solutions completely and without encumbrance. Furthermore, I'm awarding substantial sanctions against TechCore for bringing this frivolous lawsuit in bad faith. She outlined the damages: $375,000 for my legal fees, $200,000 for emotional distress, and back wages. Every dollar I should have earned over 11 years if I'd been paid fairly and promoted appropriately. That came to approximately $400,000. Total award, just under $1 million. But the real victory was still coming. TechCore's board of directors held an emergency meeting that weekend. Gerald was fired immediately. Terminated for cause, no severance, no golden parachute. The federal prosecutor filed criminal charges against him personally: wire fraud, computer fraud, conspiracy to fabricate evidence. He faced up to 20 years in federal prison. His attorney tried to negotiate a plea deal. Last I heard, Gerald was looking at 5 to 7 years with cooperation and restitution. Brad kept his job. He'd been granted immunity for cooperating with the investigation. The new management at TechCore actually promoted him to VP of Engineering. He called me to apologize again and to tell me he was cleaning house, making sure nothing like Gerald's system could ever happen again. The other 5 victims joined Claire's federal lawsuit against TechCore. The company settled out of court for undisclosed amounts. Rumor was each victim received between $2 and $4 million. Robert Hayes went back to tech. A startup in Denver hired him as their CTO. He called to thank me for fighting when he couldn't. Jennifer Palmer started her own AI consulting firm. She's doing incredible work, finally getting credit for her innovations. David Kowalski found peace. He moved back to Colorado and got hired by a cybersecurity company that valued his expertise and supported his mental health needs. Troy Simmons stayed in real estate but used his settlement money to invest in tech startups founded by people who'd been exploited by bigger companies, paying it forward. Claire became my business partner. After everything we'd been through together, it felt right. And data-free? Within days of Judge Mendoza's ruling, the website was back up. Downloads exploded. 200,000 in the first week. Media coverage was massive. The underdog story everyone loves. The woman who fought back and won. Preston Hayes and Elevation Ventures renewed their investment offer, this time $7,500,000. I accepted. 6 months later, I stood in our new office in downtown Denver. 15 employees, modern space with exposed brick, just like the TechCore office I'd left, but completely different energy. Data-free was serving 53,000 small businesses across America. Revenue hit $3 million in our first 6 months of operation. I made my first hire carefully. Brad joined as Chief Technology Officer. He'd proven himself when it mattered most. The second hire was Claire, as VP of Product. She understood the vision because she'd lived the exploitation we were fighting against. Third hire surprised everyone. Ashley quit her nursing job to become our Chief Operating Officer. She had no tech experience, but she had something more important. Absolute loyalty, fierce intelligence, and the ability to keep me grounded. You saved me, I told her. Now let me give you something back. My salary as CEO was $150,000. More than twice what I'd been asking TechCore for. But more important than the money was the ownership. I owned my work. I controlled my company. I built something that mattered. A year after the trial, I was invited to speak at a tech conference in San Francisco. Standing on that stage, looking out at 2,000 developers, I felt something I hadn't felt in 11 years. Peace. I almost gave up 100 times, I told the audience. The system seemed rigged against me. One person with power tried to take everything I'd built. He used his connections, his resources, and the legal system itself as weapons. But here's what I learned. The truth is powerful, but only if you fight for it. Document everything. Find allies in unexpected places. And remember that corporations aren't invincible. They're just people, and people can be held accountable. If someone is stealing your work, exploiting your talent, denying you what you've earned, don't give up. Build alliances. Know your worth. And never, ever, let someone call you sweetheart while trying to steal your dreams. The audience stood and applauded. Afterward, dozens of people came up to tell me their own stories of exploitation, theft, and abuse. Each one felt like a reminder of why this fight mattered. 3 months ago, I got an email from the Federal Bureau of Prisons. Gerald had been sentenced to 6 years. He'd serve at least 4 before being eligible for parole. I didn't feel triumph reading that email. Just a quiet sense that justice, however imperfect and slow, had been served. Last week, my nephew Calvin came to visit the office after school. He's 9 now, still obsessed with dinosaurs. He walked around looking at all the computers, the employees working, the data-free logo on the wall. Aunt Terry, why are you smiling so much? I thought about Gerald in federal prison, about TechCore's reputation destroyed, about 53,000 small businesses using software I created to build better lives, about proving everyone wrong, because I built something good, kiddo, and nobody can take it away from me. That's cool, he said, already distracted by something on my desk. Can we get ice cream? I laughed, really laughed. Yeah, let's go get ice cream. Walking out of my office, my company, my victory, I felt something I'd been missing for 11 years. Freedom. If you've ever been exploited at work, denied what you earned, or had someone try to steal your ideas, I want to hear your story. What would you have done in my situation? Would you have kept fighting or walked away? Leave a comment below and share your experience. And if the story resonated with you, if it gave you hope or made you think about your own career, please hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel for more stories about people who fought back against injustice and won. Share this video with anyone who's going through their own workplace battle. Sometimes knowing you're not alone is the first step to finding the courage to fight. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminds you that no matter how powerful your opponent seems, truth and persistence can still win. Keep fighting for what's yours. Keep building what matters. And never let anyone make you feel small. Take care of yourselves and remember your worth.